Locked out of her apartment, my newly divorced ex-wife knocked on my door at midnight, and the worst part was that I already knew that knock. 3 knocks, then a pause, then 2 more. 11 years of marriage taught me that rhythm, and 2 years of divorce hadn't taken it away. I opened the door of Unit 1 at 12:40 in the morning with a drywall knife still in my hand, and there she stood. Delaney Voss, my ex-wife, soaked through to the collar, holding a grocery bag with a package of chicken thawing against her hip, locked out of apartment 3B with a key that wouldn't turn. She didn't know I owned the building. She didn't know the emergency maintenance number on her lease rang a phone 8 feet from where she was standing. She'd signed that lease 3 weeks after her second marriage ended, because 3B was the only apartment she could afford inside our daughter's school zone. And now she was standing in the rain at midnight, in front of the one man in Ohio she'd promised herself she would never need again. "I didn't know," she said. "But the thing about Lainey is that I always knew when she was telling the truth, and she was. She left me 2 years ago because she thought I didn't grieve our son. But she never saw the footlocker in the basement of that building, the one she was about to walk directly over, 40 steps from where she stood. But I wasn't going to tell her about it. Not that night. Not ever, if I could help it. So why did a woman who'd remarried in a courthouse she never told me about end up locked out of my building, on my landing, at midnight? What was in a footlocker that a grown man kept in a basement instead of his own house? And when my 7-year-old daughter found out her mother now lived 1 staircase above her father, why was she the only one of us who wasn't happy about it? For 4 full seconds, neither of us said anything else. Rain came off the gutter behind her in a rope. She had her hair pulled back the way she did when she was tired past arguing, and there was a smear of mascara under her right eye that she hadn't noticed yet, and she was shaking. Not crying, just cold, that hard shiver that starts in the jaw. I've replayed those 4 seconds maybe 1,000 times. I keep looking for the moment I could have closed the door. I never find it. Lainey. Owen. She laughed. 1 note. The ugly kind. Of course it's you. Key won't turn? Key won't turn. She held it up like evidence. I called the maintenance number on my lease 4 times. Behind me, on the kitchen counter, my phone sat face down, with 4 missed calls glowing under it. I didn't tell her that. Not yet. Let me get the master. I went for the drawer, and I felt her step into the doorway behind me. Not into the apartment. Just under the frame. Out of the rain. She'd lived with me 11 years, and she still knew not to come in without being asked. That's the thing nobody tells you about divorce. The manners survive. The manners are the last thing to die. The kitchen light was the bad overhead one. I found the ring of masters in the junk drawer under a roll of blue tape, and when I turned back around, she was looking at my refrigerator. Wren's drawings. 7 of them. Our daughter draws the same house every time. Brown box, 4 windows, chimney with a fat gray curl of smoke. Except in the newest one, there are 2 houses side by side, and a stick figure standing exactly in the middle of them, arms out, touching both. Lainey looked at that drawing for a long time. Then she looked 1 inch to the left, at the glass by the sink and the 2 toothbrushes in it. 1 green, 1 purple, with a flower on the handle. She didn't ask about either. I have never in my life been so grateful for a question somebody didn't ask. 3rd floor, I said. Come on. The stairwell in that building smells like old varnish and radiator dust, and every 3rd step has a groan in it I've never bothered to fix, because I like knowing when someone's coming. She went up ahead of me. The grocery bag dripped a line of water on the runner, 1 drop per step, and I remember watching those drops fall and thinking, she bought chicken. She's cooking for herself now. That's what got me. Not the divorce. Not the rain. Chicken. At 3B I put the master in, and I already knew what was wrong before I felt it. I'd meant to swap that cylinder in April. The pins bind when the wood swells, and it had been raining for 3 days. Every door in Ohio was swollen that week. I lifted the door by the knob, a ½ inch, and turned. It opened like nothing. That's it, she said. Wood swells, you have to lift it. She stood there with her wet bag and stared into her own dark apartment. And then she said, so quiet I almost lost it under the rain. 9 months. I've been figuring things out by myself for 9 months, and I couldn't figure out a door. Lainey, don't. She turned. Her face was completely composed, which is how I knew it was bad. Thank you. Really. Good night, Owen. The door shut. I heard the deadbolt. I went downstairs, and I sat on the bottom step of my own building for 20 minutes with the keys still in my hand. Here's what I hadn't said. I bought that building 14 months ago. 6 units. Brick, 1926. A roof that leaked in 2 places, and a boiler older than my father. Everybody thought I bought it as an investment. My accountant thought I lost my mind. The truth is, I bought it because it was 4 blocks from Kirkwell Elementary, and I had a daughter who split her weeks between 2 addresses, and I wanted her walk to be short. I never once imagined her mother would end up in it. The next morning was a Saturday, and Saturdays are mine. Wren came down the hall at 7:15 in mismatched socks, hair like a struck match, and she stopped dead in my kitchen doorway. "Dad! Dad! Is it true? Is what true?" Mom said. She was vibrating. 7 years old and vibrating. Mom said she lives up the stairs, in this actual building. I said, yeah. And my daughter did something I will remember when I am 80. She put both hands flat on the kitchen table, leaned in like a lawyer, and said, "So I can just walk." "You can just walk." She sat down hard, like her legs went out, and then she didn't say anything for a long moment, and when she looked up, her face had changed into something too old for it. "For how long?" I said. "What? How long can I just walk?" I did not have an answer. I stood in my own kitchen holding a carton of eggs, and I did not have an answer for my 7-year-old, and she read that on me the way kids read everything. And she said, "Okay," and asked for cinnamon toast, and that was the end of it. That was the first crack. I just didn't know it yet. By Tuesday, the whole building knew. Miss Ardith in 4B, 81, 3 cardigans at all times, has locked herself out of that apartment 9 times since I bought the place. Cornered me at the mailboxes. The new girl in 3B. Her name's Delaney. I know what her name is, Owen. I read the box. She jabbed a finger at the brass plate. "It says Voss, and that child of yours calls her Mom. And you look like a man who's been hit with a shovel." She patted my arm. "You should eat something. The thing about living under someone is the sound." Her chair scraped at 6:15 every morning. Same chair, same scrape. Right over my bedroom. She has always gotten up at 6:15. 11 years I woke up to that woman moving through a house before the sun. And now there was a floor between us, and I could still set a watch by her. Some mornings I lay there and listened to it and felt nothing but a dull, flat ache. Some mornings I lay there and it was the best sound in the world, and that scared me a great deal more, because I wasn't a free man. I'd been seeing Nadia Ruthven for 8 months. A large animal vet, hands like a bricklayer, laughs from the stomach, drives a truck that smells like hay and iodine. She'd met Wren in month 4, and did it right. No gifts, no performance, just sat on the floor and let a 6-year-old explain the entire plot of a cartoon to her for 40 minutes. Nadia met Lainey on a Thursday, in the stairwell, both of them carrying groceries. It went well. That was the problem. It went beautifully. They laughed about the 3rd step. Nadia held the door. Lainey said something about the boiler, and Nadia said, "He'll fix it tonight, he can't sleep anyway." And Lainey's eyes came up and found mine over the bag in my arms. Later, upstairs, Lainey passed me on the landing and said, "She's lovely, Owen." She meant it. That's what I couldn't stand. If she'd been cruel, I'd have had something to hold. The radiator in 3B died the first week of November. I knew because I heard her drag her mattress into the front room where the one working register was. And because at 6:15 the chair didn't scrape, and I lay in the dark thinking, she's under a coat up there. I went up with a pipe wrench at 8 in the morning. The valve was seized solid. I laid down on her floor to reach the union, and from there, flat on my back with rust flaking into my eyes, I could see under her couch, and there was a moving box that had never been unpacked, and on the side of it, in black marker in her handwriting, T. I stopped moving. "Owen? Bleeder's gone," I said, to the underside of a radiator. "I'll have to pull the whole valve." She sat down on the arm of the couch, 9 feet away, and she said, out of absolutely nowhere, Brant left because I wouldn't take down the picture. I lay there with a wrench in my hand. Front hallway, she said. Theo's picture. The hospital one. With the hat on. He said it was in his eyeline every morning, and he was tired of being married to a hallway. She wasn't crying. Her voice was doing that thing where it stays completely flat, because flat is the only way it comes out. And I told him if he ever asked me again, I'd move out that day. Did he ask again? He asked again in April. The furnace kicked on downstairs. I heard it 3 floors down, the whole building shuddering into itself the way it does. I married a man I didn't love, she said, so I would stop being alone in a house. And I made him live with a ghost he never met. So don't, Owen, don't sit there thinking I'm the one who got hurt in that. I'm not. I did that to him. I said, Lainey, what? And I opened my mouth to tell her. About the basement. About the footlocker with the busted latch that I have to hit twice with my palm to open. About the letters inside it with a number on them that starts with a 6. About a church basement in Dayton, 90 minutes each way, every Tuesday for 22 months, where I signed my name on a clipboard 104 times and never once said a word out loud. That was the moment. Right there, on my back on her floor, with rust in my eyes. And what came out of my mouth was, I'll have the part Thursday. I got up. I picked up my wrench. I walked out of that apartment and down 2 flights and into my own kitchen and stood at the sink with both hands on the edge of it, breathing like a man who'd run up a hill. Because here's the thing nobody understands about me, and it is the reason my marriage died. I wasn't protecting myself. She was the one who signed the consent form in the NICU at 3 a.m. on day 4. The out-of-network transfer. Nobody told her what it would cost. Nobody tells anybody. That's the whole business. And 11 days later our son was gone, and 8 weeks after that, the bills started. $61,000. And every single one of them had her signature at the bottom of the authorization. She never saw one of them. Not one. I got the mail every day for 2 years. And I thought, God help me, I honestly thought, if I can just get this to 0 before she ever knows, then she never has to carry it. She never has to lie awake and think that a form she signed at 3 in the morning while her baby was dying is going to follow her for the rest of her life. So I took the Toledo job. Then Erie. Then Toledo again. 70 nights a year. 2 years. And my wife sat in an empty house with a 4-year-old and a dead son and watched her husband get busier, and she came to the only conclusion a sane person could come to. She thought I didn't feel it. She stood in our kitchen the night she left and said, I'm not leaving you, Owen. I'm leaving the house you turned into. And I let her go. Because the number wasn't 0 yet. I stood at my sink that November morning, and I heard her chair scrape once, above my head, and I understood something that took the ground out from under me. I had never once, in 2 years, considered that I might have been wrong. 3 weeks later the pipe in the basement let go. I was under the stairs at 11 at night with a flashlight in my teeth and an inch of cold water coming over the tops of my boots, and I heard the stairwell door bang, and it was Lainey, barefoot, with an armload of towels. Where is it? Back wall. Don't come down. There's... She came down, and she stopped, because the water had shoved the footlocker out from under the workbench, and the latch I have to hit twice had hit the concrete post, and it was open, and everything inside it was floating. She got down on her knees in that water. She picked up the top letter, held it under the flashlight beam, and I watched my ex-wife read the words, paid in full, on a letterhead she'd never seen in her life, with a number under it that started with a 6, and a name at the top that was mine alone. She looked up at me, and she said, Owen, what is this? What is this? I didn't answer her. I reached past her and grabbed the footlocker by both handles and hauled it up onto the workbench, and water came out the seams of it, like something bleeding, and I said, Go upstairs, Lainey. What is this? The main's still open. I have to get to the... Owen. She had never shouted at me. 11 years. Not once. She's a quiet fighter, always was. She goes flat and cold and precise, and that scream came out of her so raw that I felt it in my back teeth. I went to the wall and I shut the main off, and the sound of running water stopped, and the basement went silent except for dripping, and I stood there with my back to her because I could not turn around. Behind me, I heard paper. 61,000, she said. $240. Drip, drip. Owen, this is dated March. 2 years ago March. This is a collection notice. Paper. More paper. How many of these are there? Laney. Whose name is on them? Mine. Whose name is on the? Mine. I turned around. Only mine. I called them in the second week, and I had them take yours off the file, and I put mine on it. That's what took 3 months. That's why they're dated March. She was on her knees in the water with her hands full of wet paper, and she looked at me like she'd never seen my face before. They wouldn't have taken my name off, she said. You don't know what I did to get it off. And then she found the other stack. I saw the moment. I saw her hand go into the locker and come out with the clipboard sheets, 104 of them, curled and swollen and stuck together at the corners, and she peeled one off the top and held it under the flashlight. I watched her read it. Grace Fellowship Lower Hall. Bereaved parents. Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Please sign in. And in the fourth line down, in handwriting she'd been reading since she was 26 years old. O bracket. She peeled another one. O bracket. Another. O bracket. Dayton, she said. Her voice had gone somewhere small. This is Dayton. This is Owen. This is 90 minutes. 94. Tuesdays. She was going faster now. Peeling them. Dropping them. Water everywhere. Tuesdays. You said Tuesdays was the Erie bid. You said, every Tuesday for 2 years you told me. 104 of them. I said. She stopped. Count them if you want. There's 104. And Lainey Voss sat back on her heels in an inch of cold water in my basement, holding 2 years of my life in her hands, and made a sound I had only heard from her one other time, in a hospital corridor, at 6:40 in the morning, on the 11th day. I should have gone to her. I want that on the record. 20 years from now, when Ren is grown and asks me what kind of man her father was, I want it said plainly. My ex-wife was on the floor of my basement making that sound, and I stood 8 feet away with my hands at my sides, because I had spent 2 years building a wall so I could function, and the wall was all I had, and it was still standing. Then she found the notebook. Green cover. Spiral. 99 cents at the drugstore on Delacourt. It had been floating, and it was ruined, but the ink was ballpoint, and ballpoint holds. Don't, I said. She opened it. I know exactly what she read, because I know exactly what's in it. Every Tuesday I sat in my truck in that church parking lot at 8:35 at night, before the 94 minutes home. And I wrote one line to my son, and I never finished a single one. Theo. Today a woman named Roberta said the first year is a lie. It's the second one that Theo. You'd be walking now. I keep doing the math like it's Theo. Your sister asked me if you would have liked her, and I said Theo. I told them tonight that I don't come here to talk. Roberta said that's fine. Roberta said some people come to be in a room where nobody feel. 104 of them. Not one finished. 2 years of a man starting a sentence to a dead baby and running out of road. Lainey read 4. She got to the 5th, and her hands started going, and she put the notebook down on the wet concrete very carefully, the way you set down something that belongs to somebody else, and she said, you didn't finish any of them. No, not one. No, why? And I heard my own voice come out of me, and it did not sound like mine. Because there's no end to that sentence, Lainey. I sat in that truck 104 times, and there is no end to it. That's when she got up. And that's when we finally had the fight we should have had in 2023. You let me leave. Lainey, you stood in that kitchen, and you let me stand there, and tell you that you didn't love our son. You didn't say that. I said you didn't feel it. I said it to your face, and you let me say it. She was coming at me now, across the water. Do you know what I have carried for 2 years? Do you have any idea? I told my mother. I told my sister. I told a judge, Owen. I sat in a room, and I told people that the father of my children didn't grieve his son, and you let me. You let me go out into the world and say that about you, because you'd have stayed. The basement rang with it. I hadn't known that was in me. I swear before God, I didn't know that was in me until it came out. If I'd showed you, I said, and my voice broke in the middle of it, if I'd opened this box in that kitchen, you'd have stayed. You'd have stayed for the debt. You'd have stayed because you'd have found out that the form you signed at 3 in the morning cost $61,000, and you would have stayed to help me pay it, and every single day of the rest of your life, you would have looked at me and remembered that you signed it. She stopped moving. Yes, I said. I knew. I've known since the 8th week. It's the out-of-network transfer authorization. Page 4. They got you to sign it at 3 in the morning on day 4 when they were putting him in the ambulance, and nobody told you what it meant, and nobody was ever going to tell you what it meant, because that's how the whole thing works. My hands were shaking, and I decided, standing at the mailbox with the second notice in my hand, I decided you were never going to know, and I have kept that. For 2 years. That is the only thing I have done right since our son died, and I would do it again. Silence. Water dripping off the workbench. And then Lainey said, very quietly, that wasn't yours to decide. I know. That was mine, Owen. That was my signature. That was my son, too. She was crying now, finally. And it was terrible. And it was 2 years late. You took the worst thing that ever happened to me, and you carried it out of the room without asking. You didn't protect me. You removed me. You made me a person things get decided about. And there it was. 22 months of overtime. 104 Tuesdays. $61,240. And she put her finger on the one true thing, in half a second, the way she always could. I sat down on the bottom step of the basement stairs. Everybody keeps telling me we should have talked, I said. Your sister said it. My brother said it. Somebody at work said if we'd just communicated. I laughed, and it came out awful. We went, Lainey. Don't you tell me we didn't go. She went very still. Don't, she said. 4 sessions. 6th floor, the family suite, the woman with the... Owen, don't. The woman with the tissues on the little table. Don't. Session 3, I said. And she put both hands over her face. Because we did go. Everybody forgets that. The hospital sets it up. They hand you a card before you leave the building without your baby, and we went, both of us, 4 times, and it was working. That's what nobody believes. It was working. And in session 3, the counselor asked me what I was most afraid of, and she waited, and the room was quiet, and I said the true thing. I said, when the alarm stopped, I felt relief. 11 days. 11 days of monitors screaming every 90 seconds. 11 days of running down a corridor every time a tone changed pitch. 11 days of a man's whole body braced like a fist. And when it finally stopped, before the grief came, in that one gap of about 2 seconds, what I felt was relief. That it was over. That the noise was over. And I said it out loud in a room with my wife in it. She never went back. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse me of anything. She just stopped going. And I kept going alone. And 8 months later, she started going to Dayton in my truck instead. On Tuesdays, 94 minutes, to sit in a church basement, where the whole rule of the room is that nobody makes you explain yourself. That's what did it, I said, to the concrete floor. Not silence. Talking. We talked, and I told the truth, and it killed us. Lainey's hands came down off her face, and what she said next rearranged my entire life. I stopped going, she said, because you were right. I looked up. I felt it too. The basement. The dripping. The green notebook face down in the water. 2 seconds, she said. Maybe not even. When the room went quiet, I thought, thank God. And then I thought, Owen, I thought, what kind of animal am I? She was shaking so hard she had to hold the workbench. And then you said it out loud. You said my exact thought out loud in front of a stranger like it was a normal thing a person could survive saying. And I couldn't be in the room. I couldn't be in the room with somebody who'd say it, because if you could say it, then it was real. And if it was real, then she couldn't finish. For 2 years, she said, I have believed I was the only person on earth who felt relieved when my baby died. And you knew. You've known since 2023. You've been sitting on that too. I said, Roberta says everybody in that room felt it. Who is Roberta? She runs the Tuesday group. She lost twin boys in 1994. I wiped my face with the back of my wrist. First night I ever went, I sat in the back and didn't talk. And at the end, she came over and she said, You're the relief one, aren't you? Just like that. To a stranger. And I said yes. And she said, good. That one's the worst to carry alone, and it's the most common thing in this room. Lainey made a sound like she'd been hit. 104 times, she said. You had that for me. You had the one thing I needed for 2 years, and you drove 94 minutes twice a week to get it, and you brought it back, and you put it in a box in a basement. Yes. Why? Because I couldn't have it in the house. Why not? And I said the last true thing I had. Because Ren lives in the house. And Lainey sat down on the wet floor across from me. And neither of us said anything for a long time. And up through the ceiling, 3 floors up, muffled and small, we could both hear the sound of a 7-year-old's feet crossing a room she wasn't supposed to be out of bed in. Nadia knew before I did. She figured it out in a Tractor Supply parking lot on the first Saturday in December. And she didn't need me to say a word, because she'd been watching me hang a storm window on 3B in 28-degree weather, with no gloves on. She turned the truck heater down so she wouldn't have to talk over it. Owen? Yeah. When are you going to tell me about the basement? I looked straight ahead through the windshield. A woman was loading a bale of straw into a hatchback. Snow was starting, the dry kind that doesn't stick. How long have you known? 3 weeks. You came home soaked to the knee and you didn't say anything about it, and you've told me about every single burst pipe in that building for 8 months. She wasn't angry. That was the worst part. Nadia Ruthven has hands like a bricklayer and a laugh you can hear across a barn, and she said it as gently as a person can say a thing. You've been renovating that building for 2 years, so you'd have a reason to stay 4 blocks from a school. Now she lives 1 floor up. Owen, honey, look at me. I looked at her. I'm not competing with a dead baby and 11 years, she said. I don't want to win that. If I won that, what would I even have? Nadia, don't. She put her hand up. You get 1 apology, and that's it. I've watched women turn themselves into a courtroom over this, and I'm not doing it. Say it once. I said, I'm sorry. Accepted. She put the truck in reverse. Now say the other thing. What other thing? The thing you're too decent to say while I'm sitting here. She backed out. Say it anyway. I'd rather hear it from you. I said I never stopped. There it is. And she laughed. Actually laughed. Wet-eyed and steady. Okay. Okay. And then, as we pulled out onto Route 9, you know a therapist could have fixed this in 6 months. We had one. Then why? Because in session 3 I told the truth, I said. And it's the reason she left. Nadia drove a 1/4 mile without speaking. Then you'd better go finish that sentence, she said. Because that woman has been living 1 floor above you since October, and Owen, a person doesn't lock themselves out of an apartment on the one night the only man who can open it is standing 8 feet away for nothing. She dropped me at the curb on Delacourt. She hugged me on the sidewalk, hard, the way you hug somebody at a funeral. She was the best person in this entire story, and she got the smallest part of it. And I have never stopped being sorry about that. 6 days later, a black Silverado parked in front of my building, and Brant Keeler got out of it. I knew him from a photograph on my daughter's iPad. 44. Big through the shoulders. He came up my walk and put out his hand, and I shook it, because what else do you do? You're Owen. I'm Owen. I'm not here to start anything, he said. I'm here because I owe her a thing. I owe her in person. He looked up at the 3rd floor windows. 14 weeks sober Thursday. I got a house in Columbus, 3 bedrooms, my sister's 2 streets over. I came to ask her to come back, and I came to say, he stopped, and his jaw worked, that if she does, the picture stays up, hallway, wherever she wants it. I'm the one who has to get used to it. And God help me, I couldn't hate him. She's home, I said. He was up there 40 minutes. I stayed in Unit 1, and sanded a piece of trim that did not need sanding. He came down and got in his truck and sat there a long while before he started it. Lainey did not come down. That same week the letter came. I know because Ren told me, the way 7-year-olds tell you the thing that will kill you while they are looking for a snack. Mom got a job in Carolina. I said, what? North one or South one? She was in the fridge to the shoulder. She said, don't tell Dad yet. Is there string cheese? Charlotte? A dental group off Providence Road. $34,000 more a year. then Kirkwell pays a hygienist, and dental benefits, and a signing bonus. And I found all this out later. But that night all I knew was Carolina, and don't tell Dad yet. So I stopped going to the door. That's the truth, and I'm not proud of it. I fixed the radiator valve, and I put the storm windows in, and I stopped knocking. Because a man who has been told nothing has been told everything. And I had spent 2 years being the one who decided things about her, and I was not going to stand at the bottom of a staircase and beg her to stay in a town that paid her less. 9 days. Christmas came and went in that stupid frozen silence. I hung a wreath on the front door of the building and shoveled the walk twice a day and heard her chair scrape at 6:15 every single morning. Then, on a Tuesday in January, my daughter destroyed me at my own kitchen table. She'd been working on her homework and she just stopped, pencil down, both hands flat. Dad. Yeah. Bug. Don't let her in again. I turned around from the sink. Don't let her in again, until she promises out loud. The refrigerator hummed. The radiator ticked. Wren. She didn't promise last time. 7 years old. Chin going. Absolutely level. She just left. Nobody said anything. Nobody promised anything. And then her stuff was gone, and I came home from school, and it was gone. Her voice went up and cracked, and she pushed right through it. And now she's up the stairs, and everybody's so happy, and I'm not happy. Dad, I'm not. Because nobody promised me anything this time either. And one day, I'm going to come home from school, and I got across that kitchen so fast I knocked the chair over. I held my daughter while she cried out 2 years of a thing nobody ever asked her about. 2 years. She'd been carrying it since she was 5. Her mother and I had 100 conversations about custody and schedules and school zones, and not one of us, not one, had ever thought to ask the child what she was afraid of. We were so busy protecting each other from information that we forgot the only person in the house who actually needed some. When she'd cried herself flat, I got her a glass of water, and I sat on the floor, with my back against the dishwasher, and I said, I'm going to fix this. How? I'm going to go tell your mom what you just told me. Don't say I cried. I'm going to say you cried. Dad. Wren. I looked at her. That's the whole problem. That's the exact whole problem. Right there. And we're not doing it in this family anymore. She has to know the true thing. Even the part that hurts. I went up at 9 o'clock at night and I knocked 3 times. Paused, knocked twice. I heard her stop breathing on the other side of that door. She opened it, and I did not go in, and I did not sit down, and I did not ask about Charlotte or Brant or the letter. I stood on the landing, and I told her word for word what our daughter said at my kitchen table. Don't let her in again until she promises out loud. Lainey put her hand over her mouth. She's been holding that since she was 5, I said. Both of us. We both did that to her. And Lainey, I'm not asking you to stay. I'll drive her to Charlotte myself. Every month. I'll do the whole drive. I don't care. But you cannot leave that child a second time without saying the words out loud. And I mean out loud. To her face. That's not a request. That's the last thing I'll ever ask you for. She stood in that doorway and cried without a single sound. And then she said, Owen, come inside. No. Owen. No, I said. Not tonight. You don't decide something like this with me standing in the room. I've done enough deciding for both of us. And I went downstairs. Hardest walk of my life. No, 31 steps. I counted them. She turned Charlotte down the next morning. She told me on a Saturday, in the laundry room, both of us folding, which is exactly how the biggest moment of my life arrived, over a basket of towels next to a machine that eats quarters. I called them Wednesday. It's done, I said. You could have taken it. I know. 34,000. I know what it was, Owen. I read the letter 40 times. She kept folding. I didn't do it for you. I want that said plain, because we are done with people deciding things quietly around here. I did it because I have left one room too many in my life, and I don't want to be 40 years old and find out that leaving is just what I do. She set the towel down. I turned down a marriage in Columbus too. I know. I saw him leave. Did you? Her mouth went crooked. Did you sand something? I sanded a piece of trim for 40 minutes. And Delaney Voss laughed. Really laughed. Out loud. in a basement laundry room in January. And I heard a sound I had not heard since before our son was born. And I had to look at the ceiling for a second. February the 7th, Saturday. Snow on the fire escape, that heavy quiet snow that makes a whole town shut up. I was making eggs. Wren was on the counter, because she is always on the counter. At 6:15, the chair upstairs did not scrape. At 6:19, I heard a door, and feet on the stairs. 31 steps, 3 knocks, pause, 2 more. Wren stopped swinging her legs. I opened the door and Lainey was standing there in a coat over pajamas, with her hair a wreck and her eyes already going, and she looked past me at our daughter on the counter, and she said, "Wren, I need you to listen to me, because I'm going to say it out loud, and I'm only going to have to say it out loud once." And she came in, and she stood in the middle of my kitchen with her boots dripping on the floor, and she said it. "I'm not going anywhere." Wren's chin started. "I'm not going anywhere," Lainey said again. "Not to Carolina, not to Columbus, not anywhere. And if it gets bad, and honey, sometimes it will get bad. That's true, and I'm not going to lie to you. I will say so in this kitchen, out loud, to your dad's face and to yours, and I will still be here in the morning. That's the promise. You can hold me to it. You can hold me to it in front of anybody." My daughter got off that counter and hit her mother at a dead run, and over the top of Wren's head, Lainey looked at me and said, "That goes for you too. Say something." I said, "Okay. That's it, okay." And I found the only vow I had left in me. The only one that was actually worth anything, because it was the one that cost something. I said, "Tuesdays are mine. Come with me." She closed her eyes. She said, "Yes." 14 months later. Grace Fellowship, Lower Hall, Dayton, Ohio. Folding chairs in a circle. Bad coffee. A radiator that bangs. Roberta, who lost twin boys in 1994, going around the room the way she has every Tuesday for 30 years. She got to me, and for the first time in 140-some Tuesdays, I talked. I said 4 sentences. That's all I had. I said, "My son was named Theo. He lived 11 days. When the alarm stopped, I felt relief before I felt anything else, and I thought that made me a monster, and it turns out my wife felt the exact same thing at the exact same second, and neither of us said it for 2 years. And then I said, we could have had those 2 years. Lainey was in the chair beside me holding my coat in her lap, and she did not say a word, because that room has a rule, and the rule is that nobody makes you explain yourself. We remarried in October in the courtyard behind the building. 40 people. Miss Ardith from 4B did the reading and mispronounced 2 words and dared anybody to say something. Nadia sent a card and a case of good wine and did not come, which was the correct and kind thing, and I keep that card in a drawer. Brant Keeler is 2 years sober and sent a text that said, "Good for you both," and I have never in my life been so glad to be wrong about a man. The footlocker is not in the basement anymore. It's in the front hall closet of Unit 1, in the house, where Wren can reach it, because she's 9 now, and last summer she asked me to read her the notebook, and I did. All 104 unfinished lines, and she listened to every one, and then she said, "Dad, you should finish one," and I said I couldn't, and she said, "Then I will," and she took the pencil and she wrote, under the last one, in 9-year-old handwriting, "Theo, we're okay now. Love, your sister." There's a mailbox on the front of that building with a brass plate on it. Unit 1. It has 3 names on it, and underneath, smaller, in letters Lainey had made at the hardware store on Delacourt without telling me, there's a 4th. Theo. Because she asked me if she could, out loud, in the kitchen, to my face. Here's what I want to leave you with, and then I'll let you go. My marriage did not die from a lack of love. There was never one single day it was short on love. It died because 2 people who adored each other each decided, privately, quietly, with the very best of intentions, that the other one was too fragile to hold the truth. I hid a debt to protect her. She hid a feeling to protect me. And that silence cost us 2 years, a home, and very nearly the rest of our lives. So let me ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with it, because I think it matters more than anything else in this story. What is the one true thing you are carrying right now? The thing you've decided the people who love you are too fragile to hear. Who told you they were fragile? Did you ever actually ask them, or did you just decide it alone, in the dark, at a mailbox, the way I did? Because I'll tell you what I learned on my back on a basement floor at 40 years old. Protecting someone from the truth isn't love. It's a decision you made about them instead of with them. And the people who love you would almost always rather carry the weight with you than watch you carry it away from them. Say the true thing. Say it out loud. Say it today, while the people you'd say it to are still in the room. You will not always have the room. If this story moved you, do me one small favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell if you haven't yet. Because that little bell is the only way you'll know when the next story goes up, and I don't want you to miss it. And in the comments, tell me, what's the one true thing you've been holding back? And who are you going to say it to? I read every single one.